went to the doctor back here, and talked to them, and they put me on some different medicines. They said they didn't think I had OCD, that it sounded like it was bipolar.
Okay.
So they put me on a mood stabilizer, and that helped, but it wasn't enough of a dosage to give me the effects that I needed, the relief I needed. So anyways, I started taking all that and went back to school in the fall. I should not have gone back to school that fall. Thinking back on it now and over it all, I dropped 35 grand in New York City in a manic episode over that summer.
Wow. Hey, family. Hope you guys are doing well out there. The Next Step podcast goes to episode number 27. And I'm really excited today because David George has a great story and a great life, and the things that are happening in his life are so important. And we're just grateful to have him here today for the Next Step podcast.
Yes, sir.
So, David, tell us about you. We were just talking a little bit before we got started that you're originally from Virginia Beach. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I'm originally from Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Okay.
I moved down here when I was 10 years old with a single mother. And we lived in poverty for a little while in the beginning of it. And she was fortunately able to get a job with the State Highway Patrol. And, she did a good job taking care of us. But, we've lived in this area basically since I've been 10.
Cool. So you have other brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I've got one older brother, and then I've got two stepbrothers and one stepsister.
Okay. So
Excuse
was your
me, I
mom a
got that
highway
wrong. One
patrol
stepbrother
woman?
and two
Was she the
stepsisters.
one that pulled people over and stuff like that?
No, she was a secretary.
Okay.
She had to deal with all of them trying to keep them reined in. So,
Oh, I understand. All those tough alpha male kind of types, right?
Oh, yeah. Trying to keep them organized, when you have 25 or 30 young men underneath you, that's a lot of people to keep
Absolutely.
in check.
So where do you live?
I live here in Belmont.
In Belmont. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. And you've been here since you're 10 years old, which means it's only 9 years, right?
I wish. I really wish. No, we've lived here. I'm 37 right now.
Okay.
And, I tell you, I find myself feeling like I am from even though I'm not a native, I feel like I'm part of Gaston.
Yeah, because you've been here most of your life.
I have, and
cool.
I love this area. It's, when I moved here, it's amazing to me now as an adult to remember how, vacant it was when we first got here. It was very country. There was even a restaurant downtown Belmont, and to see it where it is now, it's very impressive to know what a small town can do.
Well, you moved into town, things started happening, man. It's like,
Yeah. It was very exciting, actually, to see those kinds of things come to fruition. So, but we've loved it living here.
So do you live within walking distance of restaurants? Can you go to them? You live close to the...
Yes,
Okay,
we live over here near Stowe Park. And
fantastic.
yeah,
That's awesome.
It's been a really good area to us, it hasn't overdeveloped, and, the people that are around us are mostly families and that kind of stuff, which it makes it good for a neighborhood.
So you've come a long way, not just from Virginia Beach, but man, you've shared with me some of your personal journey and some of the things that you've gone through. So tell us more about David. Tell us about David after he got here when he was 10 and how you grew up and all those kind of things and some of the things you struggle with and how you've overcome them. I'm just fascinated by your story.
So basically, I graduated from high school here. I got accepted to a college in the mountains. I'm not going to name which one.
Okay.
It was exciting for me. My mom had never been to college. So, for us to have the opportunity, me and my brother, was really just a great opportunity. So anyways, I went to school and I did that for a little while. I was like any other college student, went to school, made friends, was, active in social and athletic clubs, even joined a fraternity, did all that too, really kind of got invested. It was in a small town though in the mountains and there was nothing there.
So you had to make friends at school or you couldn't have anything going on, I see it.
And everybody was in the same place on the weekends, so because there was nowhere else to go. So, it was one of those really good experiences. I was doing good. I was making good grades. I was starting to struggle, though, in the spring semester. It was close to midterms.
Freshman year, sophomore year?
This is around my sophomore year.
Okay.
I basically, one day, I started to leave my dorm room, and I had an inner voice in my head tell me that my door was not unlocked, that my door was not locked.
Huh.
And I knew I'd locked my door, and it confused me for a minute. I was like, what was that?
Right.
So I ignored it and just went on to class and such. This started to develop where now every time I'd go to leave my door, I basically would have an issue where this voice would basically just fight me mentally, telling me that my door was not locked.
Wow.
Didn't know what was going on. I was embarrassed, as you can imagine, because it's like, okay, where is this coming from? There was no like symptoms or signs or warnings or anything. I'm just like, okay, you know, what's up with this? So I let it go for about a week and a half. It started getting to the point where I wasn't able to sleep. So I went to the nurse and I said to her, it's like, nurse, something's wrong with me. I don't know what's happening to me, but I'm having issues with hearing stuff about my door. And told her, I said, I'm not sleeping like I used to be. So she asked me, she said, you know, what's going on in your personal life? You know, do you have any stress going on or anything? I said, oh, well, outside of midterms, I really don't have anything else that could be bothering me. So she was like, oh, okay. So we talked a little bit, and she wanted to know a little bit more about the hallucinations I was experiencing. And after I told her those things, she was concerned because some of the things were including self-harm. So she said to me that she wanted me to talk to one of the counselors at school. So she brought that counselor down to the office, and basically they both talked to me again, and we went through everything. And she said to me that she couldn't offer a clinical diagnosis, but it sounded to her like I had obsessive compulsive disorder.
Okay.
I said, okay, what is that? And she explained it to me. And I said, well, yeah, that sounds kind of like what I'm going through, but, you know, because they can experience hallucinations in a manic episode and those things sometimes if it gets out of hand.
Right.
So anyways, she was like, you know, that's an issue that you have to be treated, you know, by medicine with. And I was like, well, you know, how do I do that? You know,
Right.
I'm up in the mountains, I don't have a car, you know, I'm poor, I'm a college student.
Yeah.
So she's like, well, I've got a doctor friend in the area. I can call them and we can talk to them and see what they recommend, basically.
Okay.
So we did that. And they put me on an antidepressant and an anti-anxiety medication.
Okay.
So I started taking those medications. And along with that, the doctor wanted me to see the therapist at a counselor at school 3 times a week for talk therapy.
Right.
So I started doing all that. And basically, for about a month and a half, that's what I did. But it wasn't helping.
Really?
That was what the issue was, excuse me.
Did you still hear the voices even though you're taking the medicine and everything?
Yes. And as things got worse, that's what the main concern was, is that I wasn't getting any relief at all. Now, the anti-anxiety medication was helping a little bit, but it was sedating me so much to now I was oversleeping.
Right.
You know, I was missing things, you know, and I was so confused. I felt very fuzzy-headed. So I went back to the nurse, you know, and I said, listen, you know, we need to sit down on the phone with the doctor again and try and find something else. So we did that. They added another medication into the mix, and we did all that. So I did this, and as you can imagine, the end of the semester crept up. The end of the semester got there, and basically I was a complete mess.
Wow.
I went home for the summertime and actually had a half suicidal accident, you know.
Right.
But nobody knew about it, so, and I concealed my emotions very well. So basically I was able to hide it throughout the summertime.
So you attempted suicide, but it didn't work. I understand. Wow.
I did try to see my family physician while I was home during that summer too. It's not like I just gave up on treatment, but
Right.
I went to the doctor back here, you know, and talked to them, and they put me on some different medicines. They said they didn't think I had OCD, that it sounded like I was bipolar.
Okay.
So they put me on a mood stabilizer, and that helped, but it wasn't enough of a dosage to give me the effects that I needed, the relief I needed. So anyways, I started taking all that and went back to school in the fall. I should not have gone back to school that fall. Thinking back on it now and over it all, I dropped 35 grand in New York City in a manic episode over that summer. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I don't even remember any of it. I shouldn't have gone back to school that fall. But I did. And it got to the point where I was very dissociative. I was seeing really bad things, hallucinating scary things, and just couldn't figure out what was wrong with myself. So I kept talking to the nurse, you know, and using what I had, but that was the issue, you know, but there wasn't any resources. There wasn't anything to use at this time. This is, you know, 20 years ago almost. So it's like there's no behavioral health advocacy back then. And living in a rural area doesn't help at all. So, you know, I didn't have anything to work with. And by October, I was completely psychotic.
Man.
I don't remember much of that fall. Thankfully, I've been over the years been able to talk to my roommates and people that were around me at the time, and I apologize to them because I knew I'd hurt some of them.
Wow.
And, that was very cathartic for me, though.
Yeah.
I needed that after the
To go
self-harm
back and kind of
attempt.
repair that.
Yeah.
Man, thank goodness that you didn't harm yourself or have anything else come to you because of where you were. So that, I guess they kind of helped you along to keep an eye on you too during the fall, right?
Oh, yeah. They were very good to me.
Wow.
They even were bringing me food and doing all kinds of things because I didn't leave my apartment after a while. It got to a point where I just didn't leave.
Right.
But, it ended up, though, yet again, another self-harm situation. And I slipped my wrists and my arms. But the power of God was in control.
Man.
Because
Tell us about that.
the scars on my arms, if you look at them, where the veins are at, there's no mark.
Wow. Wow.
So God kept me alive for a reason.
So you stayed up there on the fall. You go home at fall break, or you didn't go home at
No.
Thanksgiving?
I had a suicide attempt. The police were called.
Okay. And then your mom took you home.
Well, it got to that point. Basically, from what my mom told me, is they allowed me to be taken into her care from the hospital up in Asheville. And basically from there, they allowed her to take me home. The one place they wanted me to go, we stopped there apparently, but my mom says she was not going to leave me in that place, that it was just really, really bad. So I'm grateful she didn't do that.
Right.
I actually don't remember any of that. And I was in the hospital for almost 2 weeks before I woke up mentally and realized where I was.
Before you became aware.
And that was my first experience being institutionalized for my symptoms, basically. So,
Wow. So this has been going on for almost a year because it started in the middle part of your sophomore year and then it continued into the fall, and you didn't remember anything about the fall.
that's correct.
Wow.
And from talking to doctors, they say that it really is it's a miracle that I'm not dead or that I didn't do something worse, because they say that when you're in that kind of state, it is very, very dangerous, that you make very, very bad decisions in those states. So I'm grateful that I was able to get home
too.
and get some assistance finally. And that's what helped. There was a book that a girl gave to me that I was in college with. She sent a care package home with my mom.
Oh, really? How cool is that?
And it had a book by Michael W. Smith in it. And I got to read that while I was in the psychotic unit. And it helped me kind of find my place in this world,
Wow.
There
There was a song Michael W. Smith called that, right? Place in this world, right?
Yep. And it's kind of based off of that.
Right.
But, that was the first kindness and hope that I had seen out of all this mess, because I was trying to figure out what happened, what's wrong with this, how did this happen? What have I done? That's the first thing you run to is like, okay, I must have done something to incur this wrath, but it's just the way it is.
So it's interesting to that, and a lot of people that are out there sometimes think that everything is very reductionist, and if you do A and B, you're going to get C. Yeah. So if something's going to go wrong with you, it's because you did something wrong.
Yep.
And like the story of Job in the Bible is an illustration of that's not the case. He'd not done anything wrong, and yet he was tempted, he was tested, and you've been tested in a way that's probably the hardest way to recover from. You can break a bone, you can break a rib, or you can even endure cancer and stuff like that. But overcoming mental illness is a hard thing. Wow.
is.
So we're just glad you're here.
Oh, I am too.
So pick us up. You're in the hospital, and you finally get awareness. This is probably January, February after you've gone home. Okay.
And basically from there, I started seeing a doctor outpatient, and they just treated me for a while. I was able to get a job. I couldn't. So let me explain a little bit about my diagnosis first. So they finally diagnosed me correctly after being in the hospital.
Okay.
They diagnosed me as schizoaffective, which is a combination of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. You have the hallucinations of schizophrenia with the manic highs and depressive lows mixed in together. So with that, you have to be treated a certain way. So I was able to find a doctor who knew more about that diagnosis. It was more of a new diagnosis at that time. It's fairly common now. But at that time, there wasn't very many people. And I actually went for about 9 years before meeting another individual with it.
Wow.
So, and throughout hospitalizations and such.
Right.
But I basically went for about 9 years. And that period was very, very dark. I couldn't get medication to work. And when I would get one, I'd end up becoming treatment resistant. And then I had a lot of letdowns. Basically, I was let down by my practitioners. They violated the code of ethics. They talked about confidential things with my siblings, things that, and it just was bad over the whole period. I couldn't find a doctor that could help, and I kept switching every couple of years trying to find somebody. But every time you do that, you'd have to tell them about everything all over again. And then they change all of your medication. And then you have to go through all that, and trying to get back to, just regular normal life. Wow. So you do all that and it's like, okay, then you have all the other regular worries of the regular world. I have to have a job, I have to go outside and function and work someplace and make a living, have housing, have all, all the basic needs for survival. And honestly, I was not able to do that for a long time.
So you tried several times, but it just didn't work.
I tell you, and it was so defeating because
every time you tried.
Yeah. I was playing by the rules too. That's the thing that was killing me is I was actually doing everything right. I was taking my medication. I was going to therapy. I wasn't, abusing drugs or doing anything crazy on the outside.
Right.
But I couldn't get anything to work, and that really over time took me to a lot of dark places.
Sure, that weighs on you.
Oh, it does.
Am I ever going to get better?
Yes.
Right.
And, and they keep telling you, just give it time, give it time. Well, after 9 years, you're a little bit like, hey, I've waited a little bit long. And then you're also questioning God,
Right.
God, when am I going to get the relief from this? What's the purpose of this? Why am I experiencing this? So
in all that time, you tell us about your faith. When did you come to faith in Christ? Was it during that time, or was it when you were a child, or a teenager, or?
So I was raised in the church.
Okay.
Baptist. My grandparents, half of them were Baptist, half were Methodist.
Okay.
I was baptized, and I've accepted Christ at a young age, but I would say that I did not fully become a Christian until probably about 7 years ago.
Okay. So after you'd wandered through the wilderness for 8 or 9 years.
Yes.
Right.
I still went to church from time to time, but I wasn't what I would consider Christian now, I was those things, but honestly, if Christ would have returned, I doubt I would have been taken because honestly, my life did not match anything that it should have been. You know, and that wasn't, that I was acting, in sin, all that. Well, I was acting in sin, but I was worldly, I was focused on making money. I was focused on success and vanity, those kinds of things, and I was young too. And one thing I learned is with a manic person like I am, you can work it to your advantage. I became very successful in sales. I was number one in my company in sales.
Cool. What did you do?
Well, for one of them, I did logistics with FedEx.
Okay.
And the second one was working actually for True Green. I actually was a commercial salesman here.
For those that do lawns and keep lawns green.
Yep.
So in the middle, so is this toward the end of that 9-year journey when you started to get healthier, or was it right in the middle of everything?
It was towards the end of it. Basically, I was in sales working for True Green, helping with them in their call center, more or less. And things just weren't working for me with my meds.
Okay.
I ended up basically having another nervous breakdown.
Wow.
And it took, for about 2 years, I was hospitalized about every month. And I'd stay for a couple weeks in the hospital. We'd come out, and then I'd have to go back in. Wow. And as you can imagine, that incurred an amazing amount of debt.
Absolutely.
So I did that whole rigmarole and cycle for a good long while as well. And finally, though, I got hospitalized one time, and it was at Presbyterian, and people there were different. They actually were very, very kind and just, loving in a way. And I found a doctor there that was able to actually help me. And the difference between him is he did not rely completely on science. He actually believed in the spiritual world.
Wow.
And he said, we need to look at this from both senses and find a way for you to work through your hallucinations.
Yeah.
So that is what he did, and he helped me. I still hallucinate, and I'm hallucinating right now. But I'm under control with it.
Right.
It used to scare me. It used to be bad when they'd pop out. It caused me great anxiety.
Wow.
I've built up so much fortitude by facing them now that they don't scare me.
Wow.
So.
Well, how humbling that you're willing to share this with us, and, you're really turning your scars into stars.
Well, I'm going to tell you, it started with all that, finding him.
Yeah.
Talking to him too, I was like, I need to improve things outside of just my physical and mental health.
Right.
That's another thing I loved about him is he approached things from a holistic point of view. You know, he's like, okay, we need to provide, you know, the basic necessities as well. You know, how can you get these other things to succeed if we don't have that?
Right.
So he started working with me on that, and we looked at what my situation was, and he was able to help me get put on disability, and was able to get a little bit of income coming in for that.
Right.
But it wasn't enough to totally make it. So
Right.
we found another few options, and he said, "I tell you, you know, the biggest thing that you could do to improve your situation is to go back to school." And I told him, I said, you know, I really have tried this. You know,
I've done the school thing.
Well, it wasn't that. So the college that when I had my suicide attempt at the college, basically they forfeited all of my loans and kicked me out of school.
Okay.
So my scholarship money and everything ran out, and it left me with a $14,000 debt.
Sorry.
They would not release my transcripts until I paid them $14,000, and they kicked me out of school after I hadn't done nothing.
Wow.
So tried to get that to work out throughout the years, but I've left, you know, leave things like that in the hands of God, you know. And plus, he gave me the opportunity to get a better education. And, you know, that was the thing. The doctor helped me realize, you know, if you can get your education, that'll help you get your situation a little bit more stable. So we did
Plus,
that.
there's just the process of going through school and finishing stuff and getting it done is also confidence building for you.
It is.
Right.
It is. So we went and looked at it, and I could only afford to take one class out of the semester. So that's what I did, though. And after 6 years, I finally was able to get a degree in human services.
Fantastic.
And,
From
specialized-
Gaston College,
Yes.
right? So shout out to Gaston College and friends out
Yes.
there who took David in, and he's your shining success story now.
They have a fantastic program, and the teachers there are just phenomenal. I'm actually a trustee of the human services program, and I encourage you to take a look at the program. It's a great way to help your local community.
Fantastic. That's awesome. So you studied human services, and
Yes.
that took about 6 years. So at what point in your journey did you come in contact with us? When was that?
At the same time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's what's so amazing about all this to me. And I don't believe in coincidences
Yeah. They're
because
God incidences, right?
it is.
Absolutely.
You know, I had found a church, and I actually was in a really good, stable church down in Lake Wiley, and loved it there, taught youth, really great kids, great people, great family. We met people and all that. And anyways, though, coming here was a little bit different. You know, y'all actually reached out to me. You engaged me. You know, you made me have a conversation with you. When I went to these things, sometimes I had difficulty trying to find people to talk to. This was not like that.
Wow.
You know? And I actually met y'all through Charlotte One when you were partnering with them.
Yeah.
You had one of the lunches,
Yeah.
and that's the first time I actually came, and I met you and met Doug.
Right.
And kind of from there, I was like, you know, I like this church. I like because we came to service as well. And
That's cool.
My friend that was with me, he was like, man, I wish it was closer to my house because he lived all the way over on the other side of town. So,
Right.
But I was like, you know, well, I'm close. I'm going to start going here, you know. And
Yeah.
I tell you, that's where it really took off, you know. I was able to find some groups, you know, and that was very, very, very helpful for me because
People inside the church.
Yes.
Groups inside the church. So for those that don't know, Charlotte One was an organization that I was a board member of that served the community of people that were 20-somethings in Charlotte.
That's correct.
Kind of during the early 2000s into like 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And then it kind of folded in the middle of that after a great run of time and some great people leading it. But just think about the things that happened then to make it possible for you to be now. So let's pick up the story there again. I'm sorry I didn't interrupt.
No, that's great.
They're probably
That's-
going like, Charlotte One, what is that?
Yeah, no. I tell you though, that was really the biggest thing for me was finding, you know, a church where I had some community and groups that I could learn. And that was one of the things I actually enjoyed is, you know, I wasn't only looking for social groups, but I was looking for groups that was going to make me a better Christian. You know, and of course I took some of the Daryl's classes,
Yeah.
you know.
Daryl Robinson's classes.
Yes. And those were very, very informative, you know, and it helped me kind of start searching for other people that speak. And it was amazing how my brother at the same time was picking up kind of his faith in the same time. And he would throw me books of different people. And
Yeah.
what was always amazing to me is that whatever I was studying, it'd be amazing how you'd be preaching that on Sunday morning.
Wow. Yeah, there is a Holy Spirit.
Yes.
And if pastors pay attention, he connects us with him and with our audience and people that are part of our congregation.
So I've
I'm honored that
stayed
happened.
because of that reason. It's kept that way throughout the years, and I've grown in different ways. I'm leading a group now.
Yeah.
You know, it's
So tell
really
us
good.
about some of the groups you've been in and some of the people you met along the way at our church that helped you to take your next steps on your journey with Christ.
Two of the biggest people that I need to give a shout out to is Clark and Leslie Bergen.
Right? Clark and Leslie, okay.
Just great, amazing people.
They are.
And then Brad and Kristen Lowe as well.
Yep.
The two of them have just been phenomenal group leaders. You know, they really do care about the people that they take care of.
Yeah.
And honestly, being in their group was really enjoyable for me. I looked forward to it every week. It was something that sometimes you have things like that you go to and you enjoy them, but they don't really feed you.
Right.
You know? I was getting fed every week. So it was nice to have that. But yeah, the two of them, both of them.
That's cool. So Clark and Leslie led a group for young singles.
Yes.
And we're kind of part of the Charlotte One connection between there and here. And then also Brad and Kristen Lowe, obviously, they're legendary. Brad's Mr. Connections and loves connecting people. And Kristen's got a heart of gold in so many ways. And
that group has grown so huge.
Yeah, it
from
has.
When I started to now, and some of the people that are with me from then are still here. And it's like, you know, we look at it and I bet they probably feel the same way, because it's cool to see that the group has grown to that kind of a maximum. So, you know.
Well, I'm grateful that you're willing to share that with people, because people want to know if they made a difference. And it's obvious that they did make a difference in your life too. So thanks for sharing that. And so now you said you're leading a group. Tell us about what you're leading and what else God is doing in your life.
Basically, God called me to lead this group just so that I could meet with other men that were my age and encourage them, to let them know that, hey, you know, God has given us a way that we need to be living our example out in life. You know, he calls us to live a certain way. And I felt like, you know, together we could do that as a group.
Right.
You know, God, he always talks about doing things in unity and doing in groups. You know, that's the way to do it in support.
Yep.
So that's kind of the approach I've taken with the men's group that I've done. The first week that we met, I gave them a list of different topics, and I'm like, listen, you know, tell me which one of these you want to study.
Cool.
I want to know, you know, what do we need to focus on in your life to get you better or closer to Christ?
Right.
So, you know, that's kind of the approach we've been taking with that.
Awesome.
But my outside of life has been amazing too. When I was finishing my degree at Gaston College, I needed a place to intern at. And I found a place through the Gateway Gaston, which is a local nonprofit that Dwayne Burks runs.
Right.
I was working with him.
And we're partners with them.
Yes. I was working for him and doing all sorts of things, but I was doing a research project mainly, and we noticed how there weren't any activities or hands-on approaches to teaching issues like behavioral health or self-harm. And I started reading into this a little bit more, and I found out something that really was just angering to me, basically. I found out that what happened to me in college is not an isolated incident.
Right. It's pretty common.
Yes. You know, I went for so long thinking that what happened to me is just something that was a one-off, you know, and hoping that it didn't happen to anybody else. And when I found out that now that every 8 out of 10 children are going through what I've gone through, you know, and 60% of them aren't finding intervention.
Right.
You know, that was very concerning to me.
And COVID has poured gasoline on that too, right?
Yes. And it's included substance use and all kinds of other horrible things that make it even worse.
Right.
So I talked with him about it, and at first it was an activity similar to a poverty simulation, which allows participants to live a family in poverty, and they have to do the essentials like paying bills and things of that nature. But it's difficult with them. They get to experience what it's like living as a poverty person, as somebody impoverished. There are no activities like that anymore. The ones that were like that are either outdated or they're not in existence anymore. So I basically have been creating activities that do those very things. At first, I really didn't know what I was going to be doing with this work. But as I started basically making these different activities and discussions, God started giving me different ideas and ways to approach this, so that not only could I teach youth and people that are still in development, but I could teach mature groups, adults, and I even have groups for people that are in service that use and work with the public.
Wow.
Have biblical discussions and things of that nature. But it's really taken off with the people that serve the public.
Like police officers,
Yes.
firefighters, EMS people, that kind
I've
of
been
stuff.
regularly going to CMPD every month, at least once, and working with their groups there with Dwayne Burks and Jennifer Davis. They're amazing people.
Absolutely.
But they have really been blessing me with the opportunity to share these, not only activities, but my story as well. For a long time, I was very insecure about telling others about what I had been through. But the more and more that I have discussed it, the more I've found that it helps people understand the truths about these issues, and it presents it to them so that they realize, okay, this is something that I need to keep my eyes open about. One of the biggest things that I always tell groups about every time that I meet with them is about the social unawareness that is within our society. People use stigma and bias and facts that are not correct when they address people that are living in crisis. They don't know how to interact with them because they've never encountered those situations themselves. So I try to tell people, listen, these issues, they can come on unaware without symptoms or any reason, your status, your self-worth, all those things, they can't protect you.
Right.
And that's one of the biggest things I try to tell people, because most of these situations end exactly like mine do. They would go into self-harm, and that's where you lose your children. So I've been trying as much as I can to raise awareness about that, because honestly, that's the biggest issue. People just don't know. Parents don't know. And even the teenagers don't know. So that's why I've created a bunch of different activities. I tell them about that. I inform them about it so that they have a little bit better understanding of what it is, but also so that they know, okay, if I start to experience something like this, I need to speak to somebody about it, and that it's okay for me to talk to them about it.
Right.
Our country is in a mental health crisis right now. And like I said, 60% of them are going without intervention. That is very dangerous.
Right.
And so I feel like if I can get the word out, and if I can let parents know about this, maybe we can prevent some of these tragedies from occurring.
That's
Maybe
awesome.
we can get it stopped. So
Wow.
I'm amazed how God is using my story to hopefully prevent these kinds of things from happening.
Well, we're going to hope that this story and your authenticity to share with people and your courage to do so will do exactly that. And, you've got something that people could be walking through right now and think there's nobody else that's like me. And I'm just grateful that you're willing to do so. You remind me of Brene Brown's book, Daring Greatly, where she talks about the reason we don't share authentically who we are is because of shame. And once we can get over the process of shame and understand that we're accepted beyond that, and everybody's got something to be ashamed of, so to speak, and therefore we need to move forward in that kind of regard. So tell some of the things that you've created, like some of the courses or the trainings that you've done for CMPD and otherwise. Certainly you're leading this great group, and that group meets at what time? What men meet
2 p.m. on Saturdays.
2 p.m. on Saturdays.
I did that so then if we want to get social and go do some stuff,
It's
been a busy fall for everybody.
Sure.
And we only have 3 of us that are meeting right now.
Okay.
But
there's 3 of you, man.
oh, no, yeah.
Like the Trinity, right?
Yeah. But it's kind of hard to get the events to kind of go do the other fun things.
Sure, right.
So hopefully that'll get a little bit leveled out in the spring and we'll be able to do more. But that's going in a great direction.
What are some of the things that you've explored so far in your group?
So far, we've only met once about one topic and been able to discuss it, and it was about not loving the world.
Okay.
Basically, how the Lord tells us to do not love the things of the world, and how we're not to be conformed of the world. So it was kind of focused around that.
Wow.
The activities and discussions you were asking me about. So
Yeah, like for CMPD and Jennifer Davis and
one of
Dwayne.
them is a activity that is like the poverty simulation. They're given a family that lives in crisis, and they have to budget a month basically as they go from station to station. I have another one called Reality, which they're given individual scripts where they do that process alone.
Okay.
I also have another one that's called Surviving the Transition, which is for children and teenagers and adolescents.
Right.
It's about basically a young child that lives in poverty.
Okay.
He wakes up late in the morning because the power's been cut off at his house. He missed the school bus and he rushes to school. Basically, they live out a 6-hour school day of what this young child has to go through.
Wow.
So it explains the different kinds of situations that children deal with. Also have other activities that are a little bit simpler than that. One of them is the emojis game. It's as simple as having different kinds of faces on a page with the words at the bottom. They just have to match them up, and then we discuss them.
Cool.
CMPD, the groups I do with them, as well as crisis intervention activities. That's a script where they basically act out a crisis intervention situation with a group, more or less. So I've got all those and a few more.
That's awesome.
Like I said, God has been giving me all kinds of different activities, and some of them have already helped all kinds of different kinds of groups. So, I'm just waiting. It's been blowing up.
That's awesome.
Yes.
So are there also things that you do that are outside of the formal training inside like the police department? Do you have individual encounters with people that are part of your, and what is the name of your business?
Belmont Behavioral CCE.
Belmont Behavioral, what is the CCE?
Cultural Competency Experience.
Oh, okay. Belmont Behavioral Cultural Competency Experience. So tell us, you picked that for a reason, and then tell us about some of the things you're doing with Belmont Behavioral.
I know, that's why I do CCE.
CCE, right.
It is a mouthful. Well, the Belmont Behavioral was already taken, so I couldn't roll with that.
Okay.
But
right.
anyways, I was like, that'll work. The question was, I'm sorry.
So tell us about some of the things that you're doing with your business outside of formal training with the police department. What are some of the things that you're doing in the local community?
So I also do mental health advocacy, and I also work with some of the people that I meet at these events. Most of them, so I always open up at the end with a place for people to just ask questions and, do a discussion more or less. If you've ever wanted to ask me, now's your time to ask.
Right.
Some of them will ask in a group, but a good percentage of them don't. They like to come up to me individually afterwards and talk to me about what they need. And I've had to deal with everything from neuropsychiatry to an eating disorder. So, it's been able to help a lot of different people get connected to the resources they need. I've also been able to put people in the path of alternative treatment patterns. The doctors that I send them to, I know they're verified. I've been under their treatment myself. I know that they will be taken care of.
They're people you vetted yourself.
And I also work with the Gateway Gaston. I send a lot of people their way because Dwayne has all sorts of connections. So
I want to kind of take the moment to explain what Gateway Gaston is to those that are watching. So Gateway Gaston is kind of the first place that we send people that might come knocking on our door for assistance or rental assistance, or they need medicine or they need care in some kind of way. And Dwayne and you and others that work with them help them to get funneled in the right direction to get the resources that they need. So we don't believe in giving handouts, but we like to give hand ups. Yes. And we want to make sure people are fed, but we want to teach them to feed themselves, so to speak. And the Gateway Gaston does that. When you're walking through the front doors of the church, on either side, you'll see there's a Gateway Gaston sticker with a telephone number on it. That means anybody at any time, 24 hours a day, can walk up to our church and is in need. They can go and call that telephone number, and the promise is to get back within 30 minutes. Somebody's talking
90
to them
minutes.
in a 90-minute period of time.
But most of the time, they're called back immediately.
Right. Right.
They're working on a diagnostic tool even right now that will provide 24/7 access. So
wow.
Be looking forward to that as well.
Fantastic. So 24/7, 365, if somebody walks up to our church, and we support this Gateway Gaston financially and then indirectly supporting David and others that are helping to make a difference in people's lives.
Well, it all matters and it all comes together when we work together. And, that's the one thing that I've learned, I can offer a few things, you can offer a few, and when we all do it, it's amazing what gets accomplished.
Right.
But I'm humbled by the fact that God has used me and my pain to help others. And I'm excited to see where he's going to take this.
Well, I'm humbled that you're willing to share it so transparently with everybody and authentically. That's just amazing.
Well, like I said, if I can just save one person from having to go down even the path, if we can get intervention before it gets bad,
right?
And they just not have to deal with all the craziness of it still,
So what would you say to the person that might just randomly be watching this on the internet, or somebody that in our church actually has been struggling with things like this, and they saw the subject line we created for this podcast and they thought, well, maybe somebody could help me. What would you say to them? Where do they go first?
Well, it depends on what they're going through. If you're experiencing a mental health crisis or suicidal ideation, all you need to do is dial 988 or 1-800-273-TALK. That'll get you access to 24/7 reliable mental health counseling. If you need behavioral health advocacy, you can find my services online, and I can point you in the right direction on whatever you may need with that kind of treatment, whether it be adolescent care or treatment for an adults. I do also have connections with neuropsychiatry and geriatric treatment as well, and more or less can point anybody in the right direction. But the biggest thing I would tell you is to have hope. Don't give up. You have to find what works for you, and sometimes that takes a long time to find the right medication, and the right kind of combination of medications. So,
And the medication thing is really puzzling to a lot of people. And first of all, there's the stigma of, if I say that I have a behavioral health issue, I'm crazy. And so therefore that stigma is not as bad as it used to be.
No.
It's certainly much more open. COVID has helped accelerate the acceptance that people struggle with mental health issues and that kind of thing. But one of the other things that's really hard on the patient and the doctor, but especially the patient that has these kind of things that are going on in their life, is getting the recipe right. Mm-hmm. So it could be that you need 25 milligrams of this and 50 milligrams of that until 10 milligrams of that once a week. Mm-hmm. And too often, because of the side effects and the symptoms after you begin to take medication, people say, well, I'm just not doing that. That's not working, right? And so they'll put their medication aside.
Yeah. You just got to keep at it, and I know it's frustrating.
And then when it doesn't work, you do what? You go back to your doctor and you say?
Yep, it's all about communication, and that's another thing. Find you a doctor, and if you have to keep changing them until you find one that works for you, keep doing that too, Right. But find one that you can communicate with openly and honestly. My doctor just decided to move. He's going to be a little bit more expensive, but you best believe it, I'm moving with him.
Yeah, okay.
But that's the thing, when you find the right kind of treatment, it's amazing what you can do.
Yep.
And I want people to know that, and I want them to know another thing. In the headlines, you see these people that go into places, shooting them up and doing all kinds of stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I don't believe they have a mental illness. That's a spiritual battle, in my opinion. And they're not the same. And I'm tired of getting grouped in with those kinds of people.
Yeah. People that are addicted to the addiction of the feeling that they get.
Some people are just hurt, they're traumatized or violent and those kinds of things.
They're self-medicating in their own way. And you can do that with food. That's kind of generalizing it to a little extent, but also uppers, downers, and whatever those things happen to be. Activity, a $35,000 shopping spree in New York, or whatever you happen to do in the shows you go see or whatever, that there are ways that we self-medicate that are not healthy, right?
Exactly.
So if somebody was to want to get in touch with you and say, hey, who's your psychiatrist? Who do I go to? Whatever. Tell me those kinds of things. How would they get in touch with you?
So I have a Facebook and a social media page set up at Belmont Behavioral CCE. Okay. They can just look me up and contact me directly there. I also have an email address that's belmontbehavioralccce@outlook.com.
Okay.
But all that information is on Facebook and Instagram. That's the easiest way, really.
Okay. So that's Belmont Behavioral CCE at
Outlook.com.
Outlook.com. Very good. Very good. So Scripture and the spiritual life is something that's important to you. You're actually saying that a lot of the reasons, or maybe the whole reason, that we chase things to help make us feel better is because it's a spiritual reason.
Oh, yeah.
So what are some of those things, the spiritual things that you have been enlightened with, maybe just recently, about God showing you this, or He's shown you a couple of things that would be helpful for other people to hear, or maybe something that you've seen affirmed over and over again as you walk through this valley?
I feel like all of our lives identify with somewhat of the process that's in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
We are God's children. We sin, we act up, we go through a period of mourning. And then after a while, He forgives us and things, level out.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing that I've noticed in this.
Right.
It takes a while sometimes on that in-between when you're in the valley, but when you get there, you finally get there, you know. But you can kind of see it happening in the process.
Yeah.
But knowing that spiritually it's there.
Right.
But I'm going to tell you, most people with a behavioral illness are very spiritual people.
Mm-hmm.
And we experience God in a little bit of a more intense way, I guess is the best way to say that.
Say more about that. That's good.
That was one of the things. Like I said, my doctor believed more than just science.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things that I see are actually real.
Mm-hmm.
I see shapes moving around all the time that I'm almost positive those are angels moving around me. The ones that are black, I kind of have to figure out what those are. But I've been around.
So those
now.
darker kind of
Yes.
shades can feel demonic to you sometimes.
Yep. But that's in everyday life.
Right.
And it's around people. People also have colors to me, which is difficult for me to explain to people, but
That's cool.
people show different colors. I can
So
tell.
what color am I?
You're red right
I'm
now.
red. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Might be not because I've been out in the sun too much. But,
No.
right.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to explain. And I also see bubbles 24/7.
Oh, wow.
Looks like little tiny bubbles floating around everywhere.
Wow.
They
The
thought
fact
it
that
was-
you are so functional in the midst of dealing with that really is going to give hope to people out there that go, well, man, I thought this was only me. And I never could understand how this would help me. Wow.
I couldn't have done it without God, Ray,
Right.
honestly. And that's the biggest thing. Yeah, find a doctor. Yeah, find the medicine that works and all that and do all that. But the biggest thing is you got to, you know, if you're not going to live through this if you don't allow God to help you. And if you're not begging him 24/7 for it, you know, because honestly, if it wasn't for him, I shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
You know, honestly, it's
So A Place in This World as a book meant a lot to you back then. What's something that you found helpful in the last couple of years that really was like, man, if you can only read this, let's get you to read that book that you recommend to people.
So I haven't been able to really read any books on the greater things.
Okay.
Most of the reading that I do has to do with data and those kinds of statistics and stuff, so I can keep up to date with the types of knowledge that are you know changing. Sometimes there's different types of diagnostic stuff that related to psychiatry that I read about as well, but mostly it's continued education related to my work.
Okay.
Now I do love
So it's become your passion.
yes.
Even the fun stuff, your fun time, and you're not just reading a novel or something else like that, but you're diving into things that are helpful and statistically helpful.
Well, I also try to find different kinds of quotes that will help people along. I was just reading one and posted it the other day by George Bernard Shaw, where it talks about being fully committed to the community and allowing the community to use us so that when we die, we're fully used up. You know, and I identified with that myself because, you know, the chance to help other people not only get through what I've been through, but to help them not even have to deal with it even.
Right.
That is a huge blessing to me, you
Right.
know, and I'm very passionate about this work. I'm excited about it because
I'm curious about when you went to college, what did you originally plan to major in?
actually I wanted to do athletic training.
Okay. And instead, you've become somebody that's a human services advocate. That's cool. I think that can give hope to people that are out there. A lot of times people think, I need to have a plan in my life and I can't switch it and move forward in a different kind of direction because I'm kind of stuck in what I've always wanted to do. And what I always wanted to do turns out to be something I don't really want to do.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
So moving forward is a hopeful kind of thing that you've given to people by saying that.
Well, we can all do it, you know. I'm going to tell you, when I was in the middle of the baddest part of it, though, I couldn't see that.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's the biggest thing. And that's why I was saying that about, you know, relying on God.
Right.
Because he drugged me through that valley. You know, I didn't walk through that valley. I was drugged through that valley.
Yeah.
You know?
So I was going to say, you would say to people, keep walking.
Yes.
But I guess what you're really saying is keep walking with him and follow his leadership. Is that right?
You've got to.
Wow.
That's the only way to get through it.
So I'm curious, do you have favorite books of the Bible or favorite Bible verses?
Yes, I love Psalms.
Okay.
I love,
Tell us why.
well, one, his name's David.
Oh, that's true. There's with the psalmist David. He's not the only one, but he wrote most of them, right?
Exactly.
That's right.
And he dealt with depression.
Yeah, you did.
And it's very evident. And, you know, it's funny to me. I read Psalms almost every day. And every time I start
did
to
Billy
read
Graham.
it, it's, yeah, I read that once. I tell you, it's funny how it always lines up that way, you know, and whatever the days I'm like, oh, God, deliver me from this, you know, where it's always good. But yeah, Psalms is my favorite. I love Psalms 27.
I would even make that advocate that David perhaps was bipolar, David in the Bible, because he has really, really high ups and really, really low lows. And while we all experience them that way, he really experienced them at very intense kinds of levels.
Yeah.
And made some foolish decisions,
yeah, he
like
did.
with Bathsheba and doing a census and the various things that he did that were ultimately outside of God's will. But ultimately, God still calls him a man after God's own heart. And he's the only person in the Bible that's called that. I think it's because, like you say, he's very much attuned to what God is saying. So let me ask you this question. So How do you discern between the voices that are hallucinatory and God's voice speaking to you?
Sometimes it's very difficult, but one thing that I have learned, God never shouts. God whispers.
God whispers. He doesn't shout.
He's so powerful that if he were to talk in his regular voice, it'd blow our eardrums out.
Wow.
You know, they talk about the holiness of God and how the clothes have to even be changed from the priests, that their clothes are too holy to even be in the presence of people.
Yeah.
I believe God has to whisper. So when they're shouting, that's not God.
Wow. That's a great
But I
insight.
also use hands-on techniques as well. You
Yeah.
know, I see people sometimes, actual people. It's lovely having a camera phone. You know, and if you're hearing things, you can always record it and play it back.
And if you don't hear it, you know that it wasn't real. Wow.
So you kind of got to, learn little tiny tools of the trade to kind of work around it. But
Man.
that's the biggest thing, though, is, shutting the voices out. And a lot of times, that's a difficult thing.
Well, the truth of the matter is, whether we're hearing actual physical voices, there are all kinds of voices that are speaking into our lives, like commercials, television shows, worldviews, news channels. And you have to learn to discern between what the voices are that are talking to us and they're trying to convey to us, because truth is usually kind of somewhere mixed in the middle of that, but you have to kind of pull it out, right? Good deal.
I tell my people, I limit what I am exposed to, and especially with that kind of stuff.
Right.
I stay up to date and current, of course, but I don't allow it in my life like that, because honestly, with these kinds of issues, you've got to surround yourself with good things.
Right.
You're always going to deal with bad things or inconveniences or something. So you've got to have those good things backing that up.
Right.
So that's what I kind of try to do. So it balances it out, makes life a little bit easier. But
So garbage in, garbage out, or good in, good out.
yeah.
Yeah, Zig Ziglar used to say, if you fill your mind with the good and the clean, the powerful and the positive, it's going to be a whole lot more possible that you're going to be good and clean and powerful and positive in your own thoughts and your interactions with other people, right?
Indeed.
Absolutely.
And I'm telling you, some of that stuff on TV, it'll change your language too.
Yeah.
I've noticed that before, how I will talk to somebody even maybe a little harsher.
Because you've watched something harsh on television. Yeah, you kind of mirror that. That behavior. There's something called mirror neurons that are in our bodies and in our brains that ultimately, so if you see somebody eating something on television, you start to move your mouth, or if you see somebody trying to comb their hair and you're trying to help them, or I like to watch like America's Got Talent or one of those talent shows, and you sometimes when they kind of get kind of nervous, you're kind of like leaning in to try to help them, or if I'm watching a football game, sometimes I'll go like, come on, or swing and hit it just the right kind of way. So what we see also is what we're going to become. We have to be careful what we let through the eye gates and what we see, or the gates of our eyes. All right, so I'm going to ask you some questions that are a little less maybe serious. So I can tell Aquafina is your favorite kind of water, at least it is today.
Well,
are you a water guy or a Coke and soda guy?
No, I drink water mostly because soda is really bad. Mental health medication gives you really bad dry mouth.
Yeah.
And it erodes your teeth too.
Yeah, okay.
So I quit drinking sodas because it was making my teeth worse.
Oh, wow.
But I do drink a lot of water.
Huh, it erodes your teeth. Interesting.
I was on lithium as well at the time, so
Wow, and we live in FMC lithium country.
Oh, yeah.
There's so many people that are benefiting from that medication because of companies like that have made a difference in people's lives. All right, so if you're going on vacation, would you go to New York or California?
Neither.
Neither. Okay. All right. So neither
Sorry.
one of those. All right, let's make it simpler then. Would you go to East Coast or West Coast?
The East Coast.
Okay. Because why?
I've been out on the West Coast and I didn't find anything positive there.
Yeah. I understand. Okay. You do it. If you're on the West Coast, don't be offended, but he just kind of feels that way.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's just kind of the way that it is.
I'm a mountains kind of person,
So are you a salad kind of guy or a steak kind of guy?
A salad.
Okay.
I actually didn't eat meat until I was probably about 9.
Really?
Yeah, I would love vegetables as a kid.
Wow. How about that? Was it because of the time you went through as a family and maybe it was not affordable? No. You just always like vegetables?
We had very plenty at that point.
Wow.
Yeah, it was only later on when we got very less specific about what we ate.
Right. Are you a mountains or a beach person?
Mountains, most definitely.
Okay, very good. Do you have a favorite spot up in the mountains?
Yeah, actually, there's a campground outside of Cherokee that I love. It's right on the side of a river.
Yeah.
So,
Nantahala?
I don't know if that's what it is, actually, to
Okay.
be honest.
It's not too far from there. It's just the only one that I know. That's
That's
cool.
probably what it is.
So have you ever taken a foreign language?
Yes.
So what did you take?
Spanish.
Spanish. Okay. So if you went back, would you rather study French or Spanish?
Spanish.
Okay. Because,
Well, I like to be culturally aware.
right?
Plus, I feel like it's a little bit easier to me. I've tried to learn other languages. French, actually, I looked at a few of those, but that was a little confusing to me.
Yeah.
But Spanish is a little bit simpler to me. It's kind of like Italian a little bit,
And our culture too, with so many people that are of Hispanic origin or Latina or Latinx is kind of the appropriate term. It's more practical because you're going to meet more people on a day-to-day basis around you with that language. At least there's a case to be made for that.
My biggest thing is I want to help every single client that calls me.
Yeah.
And although I'm not completely fluent in Spanish, if I can understand a little bit enough of it to give them the information they need,
Yeah.
that's, the only reason why I would do that.
Let's talk about Bible translations. New American Standard Version or the New Living Translation?
New Living Translation.
Why?
It reads the way I do, the way I speak.
Okay. Very good. And you were very direct about that.
Well,
Absolutely.
it took me a long time to find the right kind of way because I tried to study, and I started trying to study about 3 years ago, but it wasn't until about a year ago that I finally figured out that the NLT would just read great for me. So
Yeah. It's kind of written on that middle level so that it's easy to learn that kind of stuff. And you're
I'd
obviously
stayed
a
with
very
him.
intellectual guy, but it is much more conversational. You can handle the harder translations, but that's cool. So are you an ice cream or a cake guy?
Cake.
Okay, and what kind?
Pineapple upside down cake.
Pineapple upside down cake. First time ever anybody has ever said that here. Pineapple upside down cake. Brent is rebelling over behind the screen over there. Brent's something different, but that's okay. This is not about Brent today, although he's cool. If you are you a sports car person or a practical car person?
I'm very practical.
Okay.
I don't waste money.
Ford or Chevy?
Chevy.
Okay. Kia or Toyota?
Toyota.
Okay. What kind of car do you drive?
Right now, a Cadillac Escalade, but
All right.
it's not working.
Business is good, right?
No, it's an old Escalade. It's an
Okay.
old Escalade. And it's actually broke down right at the moment. I got to take
Oh,
it
I'm
to the
sorry
shop.
about that. Well,
It happens.
it does happen.
They get older like that, start needing new parts and stuff.
That's right. I like it. So as we prepare to close our time together, I mean, I feel like we could go on for a lot longer and maybe we can have you back as a sequel sometime in the future. What would you say to somebody out there right now that is going like, man, I'm going through some of the same things you did and there just doesn't seem to be hope. And they may even be thinking suicidal ideation, or if not that, they just feel like they've given up hope in their lives. Look in that camera and talk to them for just a minute and tell them what you would say to them.
Please hold on. Please don't give up. You matter, you exist, and you are worth more than you can imagine. I am here for you, and so are very, very many others. I know you might feel alone, but I guarantee you are not alone in this. You are not in the battle by yourself, and you do not have to fight it by yourself. Reach out to me. Tell me how I can help you. Just reach out to me. It'll get better. I know it sucks right now, but it'll get better. Trust me. And I can tell you, I've been through some rough things, but I'm still here. If I can get through it, you can too. So keep on. Don't give up.
That's awesome, David. So Belmont Behavioral
CCE.
Cultural Community Experience, or Belmont Behavioral CCE for short. Is that the way it's listed on Facebook?
Yeah.
Very
Just
good.
stick with the CCE.
Or Belmont Behavioral CCE at outlook.com are your email addresses. And let me pray with you before you go.
Yes, please.
Heavenly Father, thank you for all that you brought David through and just the way that he's turned his scars into stars and his difficult experiences that most people wouldn't have the courage to talk about and share them with other people. I pray that you protect him and protect him from evil and help him as he helps other people. Thank you for the influence of people in his life in our church like Clark and Leslie and like Brad and Kristen. And thank you for Dwayne Burks and other people that have come alongside to help him too. Just thank you for making him my brother and my friend. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right.
Thank you.
And thank you so much. That's it for this edition of the Next Step podcast. And we'll be tuning in next week with episode 28. Thanks again, David.
Thank you.